Good ball played in for Tony Morley. Oh, he must be! And it is! Peter Will!
Okay, hello and welcome to another episode, a less happy episode this week of Gather Round Again, an Aston Villa podcast brought to you in association with underagaslit-lamp.com. Now, today I think that I am joined by a very special guest. Hopefully we're all working. Say hello to Andy.
Hi guys. Hi. Yes, I'm on. I'm hoping it's working this week. We tried it again a few weeks ago, but yeah. Am I coming through?
You are. I think you're coming through. I'm happy that you're coming through. I think we're good. I think we're happy. Well, at least the technology is working. So I am here with my beautiful friend Andy, and unfortunately, Andy, it has been a less than auspicious start for Aston Villa as they go down 3-2 to Legia Warsaw. We're going to pick through the bones of the game. We're going to pick through the bones of the goals. The Aston Villa goal giveaway club, I think, was back, and it was back with a bang. But first of all, let's just talk about a little bit of the context of the day. Result aside, and we are going to talk about the result, obviously. Andy, how's it feel, Aston Villa being back in European competition proper for the first time in over 15 years since we actually got out the qualifying rounds? How did that feel? How's the build-up felt?
Well, it's tremendous, isn't it? I mean, seeing the videos, I think, from the fans over in Warsaw. You know, I obviously follow a few of those guys, our friend James Rushton and so on. It just looked like a tremendous couple of days over there, and it sort of brought it home. Really, this is what all the hard work was about. For me, it's about, you know, looking back at last season, looking back where we were, you know, this time last year, and how far we've come. I mean, none of us would have expected this to be happening, would we? So, and to secure it on the last day of last season, and then obviously have the kind of exciting wait over the summer, you know, for this to happen. And yeah, this week it kind of ramped up, and it felt real again, didn't it? And it's just so far removed from everything we've experienced over the last sort of 10 or so years. You know, it's been a nice reward, I think, for all the hard work from the players put in at the end of last season.
Certainly, from my point of view, I had kind of flashbacks today to Villa in the old European competition back when it was just broadcast, I think, on Channel 5. I remember rushing back from school or college or wherever it was to get back for those late afternoon kickoffs, and it was a similar situation today with the 5:45 kickoff UK time. For me, again, it result aside, it did feel great to be back in Europe. And yes, while the result wasn't what we wanted it to be, we're not out. You know, we can't win the competition today. We also can't lose the competition today. It wasn't an ideal start, but we will press on. Let's talk to start with. Let's talk a little bit about the first 11 here. So I've got it up on the screen here, Andy. In goal, Dibu Martinez. Right back, Callum Chambers. Ezri Konsa, your friend Daddy Longley. Luca Dean, John McGinn captain in the side. Kamara and Tielemans in the middle. Zaniolo, Leon Bailey, and Duran as the forward players. Andy, when that starting 11 flashed up on your screen, what were your before you knew what the result was? What was your impression? What did you think?
I mean, I suppose I think I did expect a slightly stronger lineup. I expected less changes. I think, you know, 5 changes is quite a lot. I expected us to go a bit stronger, I guess. I was surprised to see Longley in there. I thought he'd stick with Torres and Konsa at the back. I kind of wanted to see Moreno. I thought Dean was way off it on Saturday afternoon, and I wanted to see Moreno. But I suppose you have to build these things up gradually. And I was really surprised to see Duran starting. I was quite pleased, and I think he certainly justified his place. But yeah, I think I was a little bit surprised. Tielemans starting was expected. I think we all expected that. It made quite a good impact on Saturday afternoon, so kind of expected that really. But yeah, I mean it just felt like we went slightly too weak. But it's like with any team selection that Emery makes, you kind of feel like there's probably a plan behind it, and it's, I don't know, it's, you kind of wait for it to unfold and see what happens, don't you?
Well, it unfolded quite quickly, Andy, didn't it? I thought that this was a team without being, and this is my naivety, this is my probably arrogance as a Premier League fan. I am not particularly deeply invested in the Polish league, and I assumed when I saw the team that Emery knew what he was doing, and he does obviously know what he's doing, and that we would turn up, and I thought it would be difficult because of the atmosphere, but I thought that we would probably roll them over quite comfortably, and obviously that is not what happened at all. The first thing I noticed was the absolute cauldron-like atmosphere. It was absolutely incredible in terms of the raucous Legia Warsaw crowd. They were well up for this, and they were up for it for the whole time. And I guess the Villa players didn't really have their antennae tuned in properly, because within 3 minutes we're 1-0 down, Andy.
Big goal to concede, wasn't it? But like you say, just picking up on that, the atmosphere in that stadium just seemed tremendous, and I'd love to know what the Villa fans who were in the ground thought of it. Really, I think we talk a lot about atmosphere in this country, and kind of the great atmospheres that we create, but we don't do anything like we saw tonight, do we? It was absolutely bouncing, and even, you know, all the way through the half, you know, it just seemed to be, yeah, like really loud and intimidating for the players. So, but yeah, I mean, really slow start, very sloppy. You know, obviously, a clear issue there with Callum Chambers. He's kind of obviously didn't quite oil off all the rust that's been developing over the recent months, and he just got nowhere near nowhere near the cross, and then Luca Dean completely lost his man at the back post, and it was a very good finish, you know. And if we'd have scored that goal, I'd have been very happy with it. But from a defensive perspective, really not good enough, and another slow start really for Villa.
It was a shocker, wasn't it? Chambers, as you say, you mentioned the rust there. Which gives me mind to the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. He was quite literally looking a little bit worse for wear out there, and he hasn't had any minutes, but you'd expect that he would be, at least he's been training every day, you'd expect him to be up until some sort of level. Luca Dean not paying attention to his man is something that we've seen already throughout the season, even though we're only about half a dozen games in. And again, he's just not. Is it a lack of interest? Is he just so focused? And again, he scored a goal, and we'll get onto that. Is Luca Dean just so focused on the attacking? Does he just not care? Does he just not have that awareness? But this is a multi-time cap winner for France. This is someone who's got hundreds of Premier League experiences. He's been playing at the top level for 10 years. He's played for PSG, Barcelona. This isn't some ham and egger we've just pulled out of the non-league here. This is an international defender. But week on week, we saw it a couple of weeks ago with Salah. We saw with the opening goal for Newcastle, Tomali, whatever his name is, and we've seen it again tonight. Luca Dean not in the slight bit aware of who's around him, and what is that about, Andy? Is this just him?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that's exactly it. I think when we signed him, if you remember, we had lots of concerns, didn't we? Although we were very pleased because he was a player that had an incredible attacking output from the left-hand side. We were slightly concerned about his defensive abilities, having previously had Matt Targett, who was very good defensively. And now, of course, we've got our other left back is possibly more attacking and less defensive minded even than Luca Dean. And I've said a couple of times it's a strange thing when you're looking at your two left backs and Luca Dean is the steady Eddie defensive one, you know. But yeah, I mean he's not. It's not his strength. It's not his strong suit at all. I think, you know, yeah, he just got totally caught out, and I think he took. Sorry, go on.
Is this not? Is this not just basics though? We're not asking him to be Paolo Maldini out there. This is bread and butter stuff here, meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
Just have at least an awareness of where your man is occasionally. Is it?
Yeah.
And you say Matt Targett. Yeah, Matt Targett, for what it's worth, a far better defender than Luca Dean. But it's beginning to become a little bit to the point where, I mean, let's put it this way: if rumours are to believe Andy, Luca Dean would have been gone. If Villa had got that second left back in, he would have been moved along. He hasn't. He's here for now, and now Moreno's back to full fitness. Perhaps we'll see less of Luca Dean moving forward. But it was a great opening 10 minutes. Villa bounced straight back in. The cult hero, who is becoming a cult hero, dare I say, two potential cult heroes. Zaniolo unleashes what can only be described as a thunder bastard, which the goalkeeper can only pile onto the crossbar, and then Jhon Duran, not with a probably a more complicated finish, just in terms of the angle, getting his head to that ball and nodded it in, and 1-1 straight away. Andy, Jhon Duran, that man back on the score sheet again, his fourth goal in 2 starts for Aston Villa.
Yeah, well, as you say, when you're hot, aren't you? And he certainly is at the moment. He's very much. I mean, I thought he was unlucky not to finish that half with a couple of goals, to be honest. But the impact from Zaniolo for this goal was just awesome, wasn't it? I mean, if that's what we're going to get from Zaniolo going forward, then it's incredibly exciting. Because he made that chance completely. He won what looked like a bit of a 50-50 on the turn, and then he's driven forward and hit an absolute rasping shot. And he's unlucky not to score. It's, to all intents and purposes, his goal. And but fair play to Duran, just being in the right place, and an improvised finish, but really did well to kind of get his head on the ball, kind of stooping down and put enough power on it to put it in the net. I thought it was all round, well executed, and yeah, I mean, it felt like this game kind of felt like that Newcastle game at the start of the season, where we obviously went behind early on and then hit back, and you sort of think, right, okay, we're level now. Let's take the game to them a bit. Let's get our foot on the ball and dictate the play. And of course we've been unable to do that really from that position. Very disappointing from that point of view, but lovely goal. I mean, what are you making of Jhon Duran at the moment, Craig?
Surprise is my main thing. I assumed wrongly that Jhon Duran would be going on loan, and we'd be keeping Cameron Archer in the building and maybe signing an additional striker. That was my assumption. He looked very, very raw last season. He still looks raw in parts at the moment. I think his cameo at Anfield, where he's just blazing wild shots into the stands. Obviously, there's still some of that to go, and he's he's still a work in progress. So I am really pleasantly surprised by what we're seeing from Duran. The goal, as has been spoken about, and we can speak about it again here because it was absolutely incredible. The finish at the weekend to get back into the game against Crystal Palace. And we did see shades of that, of course, with that similar technique volley against Man City, where he's cracked the crossbar last season in an away game. So those kind of flashes at 19 years of age, you have to be really excited. But I think Emery's playing a blinder in terms of managing him, in terms of managing the expectations. Even after the cameo at Crystal Palace, he says, be calm, be patient. We need to be patient with the guy. And he's dripping him in softly, slowly. And let's not get carried away. Or let's get carried away. Why not? But this is someone who could be Villa striker, main striker for the next 10 years. I wanted to talk to you about this. This has nothing to do with the game, Andy. But Ollie Watkins has not signed that contract. That contract has allegedly been on the table since April. For those of you keeping score, it is now the 21st night of September, to quote Earth, Wind and Fire. He hasn't signed it. Ollie Watkins is in one of his dry patches of form. So, I mean, not to get carried away, and this might be putting the cart before the horse a little bit here. But if Ollie Watkins doesn't sign, you'd assume that Villa are going to have to sell either in January or next summer, because you don't want to risk him walking out the door for free with only 18 months left on his deal or a year left on his deal. So, which brings me full circle to the point that Jhon Duran being so viable and being so exciting is potentially going to be really big news for Aston Villa, because we do have the major kind of pink elephant in the room with Ollie Watkins has just not signed that contract, Andy.
Yeah, it's a bit of a surprise to me that hasn't gone through. I think, like you say, there's been talk about it all summer, and I just assumed it would happen, really. It feels like something might be brewing in the background. And of course, talking about sort of rumours, the rumour was that we'd agreed to sign Tammy Abraham, hadn't we?
Yeah.
Before he did his ACL, not having much luck with him. So, it feels like there's something, there's one or two things at play in the background, maybe. I get the feeling that Watkins might. I mean, if I was Ollie Watkins, I'd be looking at it now thinking, either if I'm signing another contract at Villa, I'm doing it to be the main man for the next 4 or 5 years, right throughout. Would take him through his prime years. Or, does he hold out and try and get that move to Arsenal that he would seemingly want, being an Arsenal fan? And I think, that would seem logical to me. It would be a massive shame, but I still think he's obviously got, a huge part to play at Villa. But like you say, when you've got a young player like Jhon Duran, behind him, keeping him honest, if you like, and Duran's the one scoring the goals, it's not a bad thing, is it? And Ollie Watkins, if he wants that big move, needs to start finding his shooting boots, I think.
Well, Greg Evans did report just on Ollie Watkins, and we'll dive into the comments that are coming through in a second. The Greg Evans did report that Bayern Munich and Man United looked at Ollie Watkins this year. So that is something to consider. That is something that might be of interest. So the Lucha Duster says, does Duran start ahead of Watkins now? That's the question we have in the chat, Andy.
I wouldn't be doing that just yet. Certainly in the Premier League, I think Watkins is so vital to the way we play. I talked a little bit about this on the podcast this week. You've got the two sort of variations, haven't you? You've got your striker for the game plan, who executes everything, who does the running, does the hold up play, does everything you ask, really. And then Jhon Duran kind of brings a bit of chaos as well to the game later on, maybe, which he of course did on Saturday afternoon. So no, I wouldn't be starting Watkins sorry, I wouldn't be starting Duran ahead of Watkins just at the moment.
All right.
But it's a great option to have, isn't it? And I did think actually tonight, for the time Jhon Duran was on the field, I thought he led the line really well. And like I say, he was unlucky not to get more than one.
I think we look more threatening with Duran on the pitch in this game than we did with Watkins. Watkins, again, didn't do himself any favours when he came on. Our buddy Reagan in the comments as well, talking about the excellence of the Jhon Duran finish. And also we got some chat here from the fantastic Avenger about the lack of interceptions and the lack of, making lots of interceptions, but we're not getting stuck in enough. And again, it was a bit of a soft touch, wasn't it, Andy? Because then, just a few minutes later, Muci, not to be confused with our old mucker Monchi on the Aston Villa bench, pops up for another less than excellent goal from an Aston Villa standpoint, Andy, making it 2-1 on the night.
Yeah, very, very kind of similar, wasn't it? And, sort of poor play all around. Again, it came from Luca Dean's side, and it was Callum Chambers on the other side that was just way off, absolutely way off. Didn't track his man at all. Just good finish and everything. And like I say, with these goals, there's always two ways of looking at them, isn't there? But from a Villa perspective, not good at all. Wide open. No real desire, no real hunger to defend that ball at all. And really not what we've come to expect from Villa, I don't think, from Emery's Villa over the last few months.
If I only had a heart. That's the Tin Man from Wizard of Oz. Yeah. Callum Chambers. I don't remember Callum Chambers playing worse for Aston Villa, Andy, off the top of my head, than he did today. Badly exposed at right back. Maybe he would have been better off at centre half and Konsa right back. Obviously, hindsight is always 20/20. And then just a few minutes later, Villa equalise again, and we see the plus side of Luca Dean. He gets up high, gets on the end of a kind of a bit of a goal penalty box pinball. Ball falls to him. He hits a volley. I believe it took a deflection and flies in top bins, and it's 2-2. But still, you got to hit him. Good technique from Luca Dean, and he's equalised. And that's the frustration with him again. We've already mentioned in some detail his defensive lapses, but his play going forward this season has been absolutely incredible. Let's not make any bones about that, but absolutely incredible. And then we go in, it's 2-2, and it's feeling like a proper cup tie, Andy.
Yeah, it was not how I remember European football since we were last in it. It's always been fairly tight and quite slow paced, and it always had that reputation, didn't it? Where people used to say back in the day that English teams had to slow their play down. They couldn't be quite so attacking and enthusiastic to get forward. But it's certainly not like that anymore, is it? These teams are, rightly kind of playing good attacking football themselves, and it was end to end, and we were maybe slightly unlucky not to go in ahead because Leon Bailey had a good chance, and also there was a excellent chance for Jhon Duran, which there might have been a shout of a penalty. He sort of turned in the 6-yard box, and
there was a lot of
just poked the ball at the goalkeeper.
There was a lot of shirt tugging going on there, wasn't there? And there was also, speaking of Leon Bailey, I forgot to mention, there was also a very early doors, first 15 minutes or so, there was a very ugly challenge from Kun. Let's be careful with our pronunciation of that name on him, which was really high and could have been one that VAR took a look at as well. But no VAR intervention for the potential penalty on Jhon Duran. No VAR intervention, easy for me to say, for the potential red card offence on Leon Bailey either. So it's 0-0. It's 2-2. Sorry, at half time, and I was feeling fairly confident that Villa would bring on some of their big guns in the second half and we would kind of quell the momentum that Legia Warsaw had created, and that we'd go on to score 2 or 3 more goals, and it would be actually quite comfortable in the end. I was completely wrong about that, Andy. We had another, in some ways, maybe it wasn't the worst goal. It was a good finish in the corner in the end. But the lack of pressure on the ball there, again from Callum Chambers, our tin man. Muci again, no pressure on the ball. Martinez gets a hand to it but can't keep it out. Plenty of blame to go around on this one, Andy. But what was your thought about what turned out to be the winning goal from old Muci?
Again, he'll be delighted with it, but it's weak, isn't it? Really weak. I think if you concede a goal like that in the Premier League, you are really looking at yourself. It's no one's covered themselves in glory, like you say. No pressure at all. We've given him the freedom to pick which side he wanted to go and take the shot on, and it's really quite a weak shot. I did wonder whether Martinez might have been a bit disappointed not to get closer to it, but by the time it gets to him, it should never have got that far, really. And it kind of summed up the game, really. I thought, Villa, trying to obviously make strides forward and turning the ball over and just looking wide open at the back, really disconcerting, I think, from a Villa perspective. And like you say, again, Chambers not covering himself in glory. But I want to say about Chambers, I think he clearly knows the situation there, doesn't he? He's not going to be. He's there essentially, for the British quota or the homegrown quota. And all right, he might play some games, but he's not really involved. He's unlikely to dislodge anyone in the first team as such in the Premier League. So, he's kind of a utility man that kind of gets shoved in here and there, and he'll know that. He'll know the situation. He's been in that position at a lot of clubs, and I think it must be hard to, just in terms of fitness, to be able to hit the levels that you want to hit. I've always been impressed with Chambers. I always thought he's a good player. He's not just a defender. He can play in a number of positions, and I think it must be difficult for him being in this sort of position. Really, ideally, you'd want a younger player who perhaps had something to prove and was grateful of those opportunities, rather than someone that potentially might think he could get more game time elsewhere.
It's also fair to say that if we hadn't seen injuries to Tyrone Mings and to a lesser extent Diego Carlos, number one, would we even see Callum Chambers in the team today? And number two, if Mings hadn't got hurt, maybe Callum Chambers would have been moved along. But the other person who I know you love, Andy, that I've seen, whose name's been invoked today after Callum Chambers' appearance, was, of course, the one and only Ashley Young. And Ashley Young has not played well for Everton. Let's say that. And Everton are not doing well. They are in the relegation zone and look in big trouble. But you do feel on a day like today, maybe Ashley Young certainly wouldn't have done any worse than Callum Chambers, our tin man today. But hindsight's always 20/20. Ashley Young allegedly on 90 grand a week, and apparently needed to be moved along, and moved along he was. So that's where we are. And then just to close out the game, the 5 substitutions for Aston Villa, a 3 and then a 2. We saw Matty Cash, JJ, making his long-awaited return from injury. We saw Moussa Diaby, Ollie Watkins, and also Douglas Luiz. So we're looking at an England under-21 World Cup winner, Jacob Ramsey, England international, Ollie Watkins, Polish international, Matty Cash, Brazilian Olympic gold medalist in Douglas Luiz, and French international in Moussa Diaby. It is a bit of a who's who in terms of bringing on some power from the bench, but it was not the lady was not for turning, and the lady in this instance was, of course, Legia Warsaw. We huffed and we puffed. I think the best two chances we fashioned kind of in the last 5 to 10 minutes. Leon Bailey with a little bit of a dance in the middle, and Yuri Tielemans has hit one wide. And then also a ball ricocheted to Jacob Ramsey a couple of minutes before that. And he's absolutely belted it wide when it may have been, well, certainly probably he should have worked the goalkeeper, Andy. Any blame on the finishing there of Ramsey or Tielemans at the end, who perhaps could have picked out Ollie Watkins unmarked, or are we being mean here? Do we think, Legia Warsaw, they came to play and they kind of deserved their win at the end? Would it have been cruel if we'd snatched a point, do you think?
No, I think if we'd got the point, I think we would have been good for the point, really. But I think you don't want to be getting in these situations where you're relying on those kind of last minute scrambles, really. I think both players, Ramsey and Tielemans will be really disappointed with those finishes. Ramsey's was probably the easier one because it's right in the middle of the goal, really. He's gone for the wrong corner. He should have opened up and stuck it in the other corner, really. Tielemans, it's probably a bit of a tight angle, and he's probably done what he could with it, really. But it's they'll both be disappointed, and of course that would have put a whole different complexion on the game, wouldn't it? We'd have come away with it would have been a hard-earned point rather than a disappointing kind of defeat, really. The one thing I would say is that I just think the players have kind of, particularly the players that started, minus probably Zaniolo and Duran, I think the players that started have let themselves down a bit, really. I think that they've not really come to the party tonight.
Tielemans would be a good example there. He's had a lot to say for himself in international break, and he's come and defecated the bed this afternoon.
Yeah.
Let's be fair. And if you're gonna talk the talk, Yuri, I would suggest you need to walk the walk. And while he did do very well with a couple of key passes in the Crystal Palace win, given his opportunity today to start a big fixture in the context of Aston Villa's last kind of 15-year journey, first serious Europa Conference League tie proper, Yuri Tielemans in the number 8 shirt, given the chance to boss that central midfield against opponents with respect that probably make a decimal point of what he makes a week, and he's been absolutely dominated, and couldn't even string any passes together, which is the one thing you're kind of counting on him for, is his passing ability, and his radar way off today, way off from Yuri Tielemans, and he wasn't alone.
Yeah. No, and I think what he's reminded me of a little bit is what we used to say about Ramsey when he first broke into the team. I'm not entirely sure what he's doing, what he does. I know what he's meant to do, and I know the sort of player he can be. But he just looked anonymous tonight, and his pass, like you say, his passing really not what you expect of a player like that. And I think we were a little bit warned that he hadn't been hitting those heights at Leicester probably for the last 18 months before he signed for Villa. And of course, Leicester got relegated. He certainly didn't. Not like Harvey Barnes still scored a lot of goals,
particularly against Villa.
Yeah, absolutely. Tielemans was not one of the better performers in a poor team last season at Leicester. So, I mean, I always thought it was a little bit of a punt. And look, it's early days, and he's a talented player, and I'm sure, as he gets used to the way of things at Villa, he will have better games and be an important player for us. But the signs aren't looking great at the moment, and tonight was an opportunity. But I wonder, Craig, do you think he's because at Leicester he would have played in a midfield 3, wouldn't he? I wonder if that kind of suits him better, and actually playing in the double pivot is a little bit of a, it's going to take some time for him to get used to.
I think he's shown flashes of brilliance. I think that we've seen in pre-season, and we've seen just with his cameo against Crystal Palace, he can pick a lock when he's on song. But what he isn't, which we certainly saw today, and we knew already before we were getting him, what he isn't is any kind of athlete. This is not an Ian Taylor type who's going to be working box to box, throwing tackles in, muscling people around, and just generally being a bit of a midfield powerhouse. This is someone who is physically limited, I think it's fair to say. Not fast, not strong, not dynamic, but on the ball is supposedly a Rolls Royce. So the problem is, if you don't have the physical attributes, and we have a lot of players who don't have great physical attributes. If we don't have the physical attributes, Andy, then you kind of have to be on point technically. It's the kind of old Jota guy, the old Blues and Brentford player who had that amazing pre-season and then was kind of disappearing into nowhere. Like on the ball, he was incredible, but unfortunately, physically, he was nowhere near it. But in the Premier League, it's really unforgiving. And Youri Tielemans, look, he has the quality, and I think a little bit similar to Pau Torres. If you're going to play with him, and maybe that 3-man midfield, to your point, is the solution. You have to kind of make up for some of those physical limitations, and you need a couple of runners probably beside him, or at least one runner to help him out a little bit. But that shouldn't be a factor today. He had plenty of space, plenty of time on the ball, and he is supposed to be unlocking those passes. He's supposed to be the metronome setting the pace, and he wasn't doing it, and that is disappointing. So on your screen here, Andy, you can't see it, but our viewers can. We have the Group E table, and the two group favourites in Aston Villa and AZ Alkmaar are lower than a worm's belly on the floor. Only one game gone, still 5 to go. But the team at Mostar are top of the league, and Legia Warsaw also. So so I suppose the good news is our rival, at least, or the team who we considered our main rival for the group in AZ Alkmaar, they also lost today. So that might be good news for Aston Villa. But we march on. That's probably about enough. If you are looking for a Chelsea preview, please check out the main show. Andy, a quick word on that, which is available on all streaming platforms.
Yeah, the main podcast, Gather Round the Lamp, is out on all your main sort of podcast distributors at the moment. It's there, and we've obviously talked about the Crystal Palace game. I was joined by Dan and James. We discussed the Palace game and looked ahead to this game, and we were quite positive about this game.
Well, we all were,
and of course,
Andy.
the Chelsea game.
So give us a spoiler. What was your score prediction?
I went for 2-1 Villa.
2-1.
I think Dan went for 3-0.
I don't see us keeping a clean sheet anytime soon. I'm sorry, Dan. I'm going for a Desmond 2-2 away at Chelsea. Well, listen.
Right.
Thank you all for watching. Andy, thank you for joining. How's been your first appearance? You finally did it. How does it feel to be able to gather around again?
Yeah, fantastic. It's nice being on the other side, being asked the questions. Enjoyed it. You've done a tremendous job with it. It looks fantastic, and we'll it's just brilliant to have it. Just keep it going.
We're gonna keep it going. We're gonna we have a big marketing budget of 0. So please like and share and subscribe and all those other things, so that listeners from our main page can find us. Share it on your social media feeds. And thank you all so much for watching. I'm sorry that Aston Villa's foray into the Europa Conference League Group E started with a defeat to Legia Warsaw. But unfortunately, them's the breaks. Thankfully, this is a group stage. We don't have to go and turn around a 3-2 deficit at Villa Park next week. We start fresh again, and we have an opportunity to accumulate lots of points and qualify for the knockout stages. I've been your host, Craig Storrod, at Craig Storrod on Twitter. A big thank you to Andy at K2 Villa for joining me. This has been Gather Round Again, an Aston Villa podcast brought to you in association with underagaslitlamp.com. I always have to try and say that correctly. All right. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Up the Villa. Thank you for tuning in to Gather Round Again, an Aston Villa podcast. Please like down below and subscribe. Up the Villa.
Daly and Atkinson on one of those great runs.